Thank you all for gathering here to take part in our somewhat impromptu addition to the programming at the EV Charging Expo today, following what was quite a surprising announcement that came to light in the last couple of days. The Tesla Supercharging network is rightly regarded as the gold standard of EV charging for its reliability, its convenient locations, its power and speeds. Not only are Tesla superchargers used by Teslas, which are the majority of EVs on the road, but also in the last year or so, many other automakers have done deals with Tesla to make those Tesla superchargers available to their drivers. Such is the quality of that charging experience. So it was a big shock, to say the least, that the entire supercharger team was let go yesterday. Hundreds of job cuts, not just in Canada, but in the US and around the world. Just before we go on, I would like to say that we have several of the Tesla Supercharger team in the audience today. And I do just want to say publicly, I don't think this move does not reflect anything on you and your work. And I think I just want to say on behalf of the whole EV industry, thank you for what you've achieved. And I think we want to give these people a lift, so let's give them a round of applause for what they've created. But where does this leave the industry? Where does this leave automakers who've made the commitment to provide these chargers to their drivers? Where does this leave the site hosts who have Tesla superchargers on their properties? And what does it mean for the new sites which are half built and not yet fully commissioned? And what does it mean for drivers who are looking to continue having a great experience and a reliable experience at the chargers? Well, I have none of those answers, but I'm really hopeful that my panel that I'm about to introduce will be able to help shed some context and some light. And I'm incredibly grateful to the panelists I'm about to introduce you to, who've really stepped up at very short notice to really help provide what they think this move could mean, and to help provide some light on the direction forward. So the panel that I'll shortly be inviting out to the stage include Louise Lévesque, Senior Policy Director at Electric Mobility Canada, James Carter, Principal Consultant at Vision Mobility, Scott Sharabura, Vice President, Electric Vehicle Charging at Parkland Corporation, Travis Allan, Chief Legal and Public Affairs Officer at Flow, and my colleague, Emma Jarratt, Executive Editor of Electric Autonomy, and please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
So I don't know. Is this a popular panel? I don't know. All right. Well, thank you all for being here again, as Nino said, on such short notice. Obviously, this has been a topic that's just dominated conversations across the industry, but certainly at the Expo. So let's start with the most basic question. What was your reaction when you found out? And we'll just do a quick pan down the line, starting with you, James.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. And thank you, everyone, for here, too. You know, when I found out, I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. And, you know, they've built such an amazing charging network, you know, not just across Canada, but across US, across globally, and now gone? To me, that seemed really strange, and I couldn't really understand what had really happened at all. And, you know, the more I talk to people, they're all in the same boat. They really are quite shocked at what happened.
Louise?
Yes, hi. Of course, my initial reaction was also sort of shocked, but I'm wondering to myself at the same time, why am I more shocked now than with other cuts that we've recently heard? And that's because the leadership role that Tesla has played in this environment has been really important. While we're all pushing forward, Tesla has been pulling us forward. So it's a bit destabilizing, but yeah, for now, that we just have to face that and see how industry reacts and reabsorbs this situation as fast as possible.
So I have the distinction of living on the West Coast. I live in Calgary, so I was on Mountain Time Zone, and I was up quite late on Monday night. I actually saw the news on Electric posted the early kind of rumors before I went to bed, right when it was very, very fresh. It had just come out. I didn't know what to think. I mean, at first I actually thought it was a hoax. Tesla does attract some interesting activity from across the internet, so I thought it might have been a hoax. I thought it was exaggerated. But I sent a note out to my team and said, hey, this is kind of unexpected. I wonder what's going on here. And then I went to bed and woke up in the morning, and I started to see my LinkedIn feed was filled with a lot of people from Tesla that were, also quite in shock and expressing that they had been laid off. So at that point, it felt a lot more real. But yeah, the first reaction, literally, I thought it was a hoax. Right?
Yeah, echoing of that, of course, the shock. And I think people oh my gosh, we all work with so many amazing people from Tesla every single day, and it's always hard to watch people be put in a tough situation like that when you know they're amazing. And then I think the other thing that I worry about is just there is so much FUD news stories about the EV industry, and there's a lot of people who make a lot of money by really amplifying bad stories, and we want to make sure that consumers are feeling confident and know that they can charge, and so it really puts even more pressure on everyone else to make sure that we deliver on that.
Thank you. So, Louise, let's just pick up where you left off. Why were you more shocked by this news than others? Tesla's viewed as a leader in this space. But expanding on that, why is this so significant that Tesla's made this move?
Yeah, it's the leadership role that Tesla has played in the environment, in public view, EV adopters, and also in the industry. They pull the public, and they also pull us forward. So that's what really was difficult. But yeah, I like what Travis just said. As an industry, we're going to pull together, and we need to reassure the public, Tesla drivers and other drivers, because more and more of other makes will be using this standard. Know that we have a very strong industry. We are still a growing industry in a global economy that is having some little hiccups, and I think maybe that this decision is part of those hiccups. But we are a strong and growing industry, and we will fill the gaps, and we will also recuperate the excellent talent that some of them are in the room here, looking forward to working with you under different titles.
Great. So, James, let's actually talk about that. How is the industry going to absorb this shock? If you're going to use an analogy, it's the ripple effect. We've had the penny drop. The ripples are biggest right now, but they're going to get smaller and smaller. How is the bigger EV pool going to absorb this from not just the human talent, which is obviously enormously important and very valuable, but also from the infrastructure? There are thousands of Tesla Superchargers now. What is their fate?
Right. I think that's a really good question. And it's not a penny drop. It's like a monolithic granite drop. I think that's the scale of what it really felt like. But yeah, I think the ripple effects are really very strong because Tesla had created so many partnerships in the industry, and obviously we saw that with charging, but when the industry started to convert over to NACS, to J3400 charging type, then they had to develop all these OEM partnerships as well. So earlier today, I had an OEM come up to me and say, we were developing an app, we were developing a system with Tesla, and that person's now gone. We don't know what to do. We don't know where to go now. So, and I think that's the overarching question that many entities who've worked with Tesla now are really asking. And it's not just OEMs; it's suppliers, where they bought those chargers from, their vendors, and they were saying, well, we've ordered all this stuff. Now what? We don't know what's happening. So I think because it's so sudden, it hasn't been scaled down over 6 months. It's really, people are just really saying, I don't know. So, but yeah, you're right. It's far beyond just just the impact of us charging. One more thing I think we should add is, like, I own a Tesla, and many of you out there own a Tesla as well. And the question is, what's happening for us in the future? Will the superchargers still be reliable? We've always, I've always relied on it, and it's been extremely reliable. It's been extremely good. So what happens in the future? That's a real question I think we're all asking.
Scott, do you think what happens in the future is going to be, at the end of the day, and we're all reflecting back on this in 5 years, an opportunity?
But it's way too early to say right now, but I do think that this is, in a lot of ways, a seminal moment. Right now, we'll see how it plays out over the coming weeks, because things may end up changing. There's a lot of news, there's a lot of the history, or a lot of the story that's still yet to be written. But I do think this is going to be a bit of a watershed moment, right? And I don't know if that's going to be a good thing, a bad thing, a sideways thing, a different thing, but it is going to be a significant difference. I heard one quote in the press from somebody saying, think about how shocked we all were when Ford signed the deal with Tesla to adopt the NACS charger, and it was less than a year ago, right, that happened. And that was a bit of a lightning bolt, pardon the pun, but a bit of a lightning bolt throughout the industry. And they said this is actually bigger than that, right? And I think that's, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out. I mean, we're all dealing from a significant place of ignorance right now. But it is going to be, it's going to have some changes. And I think the biggest thing I'd say, I just want to pick up on what James mentioned. I mean, James talked about the importance of partnerships here, right? So Tesla as a partner, I mean, the entire industry is built off of partnerships between different companies. And you can see, like, this very conference there's thousands of different meetings and one-on-one conversations that are happening all about different companies forming partnerships. Tesla had partnerships with OEMs. Tesla had partnerships with site hosts. Tesla had partnerships with so many people throughout the industry, and those partnerships are built on trust, right? Those partnerships are built on credibility and reliability. I think it's going to make people a little bit more gun shy, and they're going to start to ask questions around who I'm getting into bed with, and how committed are they to the transition.
Yeah, and Travis, I really wanted to pick your brain on that as well. Obviously, just even from the NACS perspective, Flo and Tesla were working quite closely. So how do you imagine this will impact not only any partnerships Flo goes into in the future, but the industry in general? I mean, as Scott just said, at its core, partnerships are built on trust. There's a real human psychology element here that's fascinating, the once bitten, twice shy thing. So yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, so I think all of us are still processing and looking at the information as it comes in. What I think about is things that are not going to change and things that are going to change. So what's not going to change is that Tesla set a bar for quality deployment and customer and user experience that we are all still chasing. And that is not going to change, because that is a standard that was established that we need to celebrate and recognize. They have convinced the North American auto industry to pick one connector type, and all of us have now secured connectors and figured out a way to integrate those in all the new stations that we're marketing. And so we are going to need to work very closely with OEMs to make sure everyone's still on track and still committed to that, because it has huge impacts for everyone, from charging networks to site hosts, right, who are trying to make that important decision of how much CCS versus J3400 should you sort of choose on your sites. And so those are the kinds of conversations and the kinds of questions that, to get really granular, we are going to have to be working out with everyone going forward. And I think it is adding more complexity to an already complex space. There's no denying that. But at the same time, like, this was already a complex space. And as long as we focus on user experience and reliability, I think we'll get where we need to go.
And from the fragmentation perspective, I mean, one of the perennial criticisms of Canada's EV charging network on the public side is it's just too fragmented. Do we think, and I'd love to hear from all of you on this, do we think this could serve as a catalyst for, okay, we don't have that Tesla safety blanket anymore of, there's a supercharger network to fall back on necessarily in the way we've always known it. Do you think this is going to draw the industry together in a more cohesive way so that there's a really comprehensive public charging network? You can just go down the line again.
I hope so. I think it really is going to. I think it's really going to spur people to really think about this more cohesively and come together more cohesively. That's for sure. And I really hope it does. And maybe that's an opportunity for people here and everyone here out here to think about that and to say, hey, we got to think about this bigger picture and start working towards it and work together much more than we have in the past.
Yeah, Tesla's supercharging network is a benchmark in itself for reliability, and that's something that industry is striving for right now, forever. Not just right now, but and this situation, I don't feel like superchargers are going to, this network is not going to disappear. It's going to still be there and might continue to develop. We just don't know that, but I think we just have to continue working in our complex world. Join our voices also in our government relations. There's a message that we've been hammering on for the last year or so. We need government support. We need to accelerate the deployment of reliable charging infrastructure across the country of all networks, all makes and models for all EVs. And for that, industry is working together, but we need that support, the ZEVIP financing from the government to continue and to actually ramp up in the coming years so that we can deliver reliable charging for EV drivers in the coming years.
I think maybe what I'd add in the conversation is that the EV industry and the EV charging industry in Canada is bigger than Tesla, right? Not to diminish, Tesla has played a major leadership role here. Tesla has set a bar for quality of service, for reliability that we should all be aspiring to, but there's a lot more to it than just Tesla. And you can see it here in the room here. You can see the sheer number of companies, the sheer number of people that are building, that are putting chargers out there. And I say this as somebody who drives a non-Tesla vehicle, so I drive an Audi Q4. And I live in Alberta, remember that. So Alberta does not have quite the same high quality charging network that, not quite neck and neck with Quebec, for instance. It is, but actually, my experience has been pretty good driving, using the wide range of CCS chargers that are out there. It's actually been pretty good. I wish there were more chargers. I wish that there were faster chargers, for sure, right? But it's been quite good, and it's getting better and better every year. I do think that the challenges that we've seen from non-Tesla vehicles have been a little bit overblown in some cases. We should all be striving to get better, but it is a reminder to everybody that there's a much larger and more thriving industry and ecosystem of charging in Canada, just beyond just Tesla.
Yeah, I would like to pick up on that. I think, first of all, we don't know what Tesla's going to do, right? So, no one here is assuming that they're not going to continue to expand. We just don't know. But I think in terms of what we as an industry need to do, number one is really work to make sure that we are combating misinformation about charging. BC Hydro, Hydro-Quebec, NB Power, we have some really amazing Canadian run charging networks, Flow, Parkland, that are really working hard to deliver excellent services. And we need to make sure to remind people that this is not the only charging network, even if that's the one that they're used to using, because we need to keep moving forward with ZEV adoption in order to hit our climate targets. And I think the second thing is to pick up on Louise, this does put a bit more focus on the feds and the provinces to make sure that they are building both the regulatory pathway and the incentive structures that get you that critical base charging infrastructure that makes people feel comfortable adopting, so that you get to higher adoption, so that you get more charging deployment.
Great. Well, I'd really like to open up to the audience for questions if there are any. There are microphones around. Okay. So feel free to go to them. Yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
Can you hear me? Okay. So yeah, Stephen Beta with the EV Society. Just a question to the panel in general. The thing that was curious to me about the announcement was the proximity to the stock boost from Tesla following the news in China with full self-driving. And just wonder what your thoughts are on if the announcement on the charging staff cut of I think 500 people is what I've heard, is related to that maybe change of perspective on the needs of the charging infrastructure at some point down the road for autonomous charging, inductive, wireless, some kind of robotic charging. How do those things relate, if they do at all?
Want to leap in?
Stephen, I'm going to start with that one. I think it's a mistake to try and connect anything to do with Tesla's stock price to anything else that they do. I mean, there's some connection, but I think we've really, and we know that Tesla is a volatile stock that can go up and down depending on any whim. But so I think it's really, really important to think far out, to think how is this transitioning happening over the long term, and really not let us have any impact about particular announcements on what's happening on that. That's my personal point of view. But I think from that point of view, you can help steady our direction and where we're going. And I think from the charging perspective, it's exactly the same thing. Let's look far out. Let's look long term about where that's going. That would be my viewpoint. Is anyone here?
All right, great. There's a gentleman over here.
Sure. Hi. David Staniforth. I do fleet electrification consulting. I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, we all have a lot of questions here. It's hard to get answers. And you've talked about the reliability of the network. I'm curious. I mean, did Tesla, are they locked in? I mean, is one of the reasons for this is that are they locked into an unprofitable network from an electricity cost versus revenue standpoint? Have they been rushing out, at all costs to get a great network? Do you have any knowledge on their pure profitability of the supercharging network itself? It's considered a big asset. Are they actually? Is it a albatross around their neck? I'm just wondering.
I don't think we can speculate on without the numbers.
I mean, it is speculating.
Right. I will say one thing. I can't speculate on the numbers at all. I have no idea. What I think is really important to understand, and I think this is a point for the greater charging world, is that Tesla built out the supercharging network to sell cars, to promote EVs, to make sure that customers and clients could easily charge their cars. And this was really a prerequisite for making the greater EV space roll. And they did an absolutely fantastic job of doing that. And I think we need to all step back and say, well, you know what? Whatever's happening on the economic side for Tesla, I don't know. But we need to keep that big picture in mind of where Tesla was going, of making sure that the infrastructure is there to build this rollout of electric vehicles and clean transportation across Canada and globally as well.
I'd like to add on that. We're talking about the business case of charging, right? So Tesla's business case is that if I want to sell cars, I need to make sure that they can charge their cars. There are other charging infrastructure that are installed that they're just selling a service. It's charging. But many of those, for now, the adoption rates we're not close to 100% yet. But there is a business case. Might not be very strong right now, but charging stations bring people to the restaurant, to the food store, to the you're selling other things than just charging right now, and that's where your business case would be. And we can't speculate on why Tesla did this. This is a business decision. I have no idea. And even if I did have an idea, it's worthless because I'm not part of Tesla. So, but yeah, the business case for charging is there right now. You need an environment of services around what you're offering to make money out of it. But it will come later with higher levels of usage, but I don't think it's a business thing.
Yeah.
For what that's worth.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure how much of dropping Supercharger was a business decision or something else, whether it was...
if it's okay, I'll add something. So I am glad you asked about the economics of fast charging deployments, because, and I'm not like revealing any secret flow sauce here when I tell you that, you know, when you're evaluating the profitability of a charging station, you are typically looking at your expected utilization, right, which is heavily driven by things like ZEV mandates and regional specific issues of EV adoption. And then on the cost side, you know, real estate securement is important, charger is important, but really, really critical are those utility and energy costs, both for the install and also for the operations. And one of the reasons why I thought Minister Smith's announcement yesterday about Ontario looking at differential rates for DCFCs is so interesting is many of the big charging networks have been advocating for that for a very long time, because it really impacts the economics of those charging stations and the way that they work. So looking at provinces like BC, Quebec that have already done that, and Ontario, that is positive for our industry, not specifically commenting on Tesla.
Thank you so much. And just one over here.
Yes, John Stonier from Carbex Carbon Exchange Corp. It seems to me that this is a great opportunity for the rest of the industry to catch up to Tesla. Tesla is the embedded network. There's no question about that. We have the J3400 standard, which is in final reading and ready to roll out. OEMs will start building these, and both in their cars and in chargers. This is the holy grail of standardization, a single standard. And with this is going to improve the economics for everything, for all charging applications. So I see, and maybe the panel can talk on this, I see this as a great opportunity. This is a sign that, okay, Tesla's going to take a pause. This is a time for the rest of the industry to catch up and maybe even excel. So we do have true competition in the charging industry.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll start there. Again, we're all still digesting this, so it's a little hard to say, but I'd say it could actually go one of two ways, right? I mean, so one way to look at it from the perspective, you know, thinking about our own charging network, is it could be an opportunity. It could be some great talent available to be able to bring into teams, potentially more great opportunities to work with site hosts, potentially more opportunity for chargers to get more utilization than they otherwise would. That would all help the advancement of fast charging from other networks, including our network, right? But I think on the flip side, right, this touches a little bit on what Travis was mentioning earlier. I do think there's a possibility, given how prominent Tesla is in this space, a lack of commitment to the charger network. There's a lot of people out there that bought a Tesla because of the charger network, and they part of the reason that other automakers were headed down that path was because they would also have access to the Supercharger network. If there's a question about what that charger network looks like going forward, it may actually lead to some people to say, I'm going to hold off on my EV purchase for a couple of years until the industry figures all this stuff out, right? I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'd say there's a distinct possibility that we might see people who are on the fence thinking twice, right? Which would not be good for the entire charging industry.
All away with a standard J3400, doesn't that take that risk away? Because eventually, if it's not today, but within 5 years, everybody will be on the same charging standard.
What I'd say is that, like, in the mind of a consumer that's buying an EV, they don't know what the heck J3400 is, right? All they hear is that the biggest single charging network in North America has laid off a significant portion. Like, they're not committed to the charging network anymore. If that's the thought process that kind of implants in people's brains, that might cause them to hesitate, regardless of whether or not they could go to other networks. It's going to insert an element of doubt into people's minds, right? That's what I worry about.
Actually, I'm going to pick up something really quickly on that. I 100% agree with you that going one standard for interoperability purposes for all EV drivers is an amazing thing. And sure, we did have to choose J3400 over CCS to achieve that, and I understand why that happened. But at the end of the day, that is a great thing. In some ways, this announcement may, and I stress may, have a negative connotation to perhaps some of the minds of the other OEMs or other suppliers out there, and just say, hey, you know, J3400, that's Tesla, they've proved to be unreliable. You know, maybe we're going back to CCS, so maybe it has exactly the opposite impact. Now, that's pure speculation, but there are some negative points on that too that we've got to just keep in mind. But my hope, my strong hope, is that we all stay with J3400, and I know from Flo's side, and I know from Parkland's side, they're very much committed to doing that. I think, as are all the other CPOs out there to that standard, and as are the OEMs. But it's that little bit of doubt that does cause me some concern.
I think we have time for one more quick one.
Garrett Renders, Integris Limited. With the recent cuts yesterday, and I believe there was another round of cuts a couple weeks ago at Tesla, there's a large influx of personnel that are in the job market right now. The reason we're also all here today is because of the growing EV industry. Are there any, I guess, key players that you foresee bringing in a lot of this talent formerly from Tesla?
I can think of one company.
Maybe I can just plug here Electric Autonomy and Electric Mobility Canada. We have partnered and we have a job board on the website, so keep an eye on that. But work the floor here. I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of companies here that are looking to get a hold of that excellent talent that is now available.
Yeah, and I would add, so same, and it's very, you know, you're not happy whenever anything like this happens, but it does create new opportunities to expand. I also think that there's a lot of companies now that were dipping toes in the EV charging space that are starting to get more serious about this. So I'm thinking large commercial property owners, folks that are only really realizing now how this can add to their business. And many of them are going to be looking to snap up sort of that expertise on how you really make deployments work from an economic and a commercial perspective. So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. I'd like to, you spoke earlier about relations with utilities. And I know that the Tesla team has, you know, high level of qualifications in that area because of the specific demands that their charging network required. So just plugging that in there for all of you.
Yeah, I'll second that. Like, when I've certainly worked with anyone from Tesla, say on Charin or other boards like that, outstanding people. So if people are looking, having Tesla on your resume for those charging people, I would definitely put that on your looking to hire list. So, you know, for those people who have been working at Tesla Supercharging deploying in Canada, know that you've done an outstanding job. Like, I cannot say that strongly enough. Know that you have set the bar for everyone else.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming together on such short notice to discuss the news of the day. It's never easy, but it's been a great chat, and I will hand it back over to our MC for the rest of the afternoon, but thank you all. Great questions, by the way. Really enjoyed the audience participation.
Thank you, everyone.